It was around summer of 2007, and I was about 8 at the time. My grandpa and his wife took my little sister and I to this music festival to get us out of the house. I don't remember that much, but I do remember it was a big field with people sitting on blankets that they brought with them, as well as fancy bottles full of drinks. There was also a stage about 50 yards ahead of where we were, with a band playing oldies music that I didn't recognize. The sun had set and the sky had just turned a dark blue. Linda, my grandpa's wife, stands up and then says she's getting something to drink. I asked if I could go since I was pretty thirsty myself and it was pretty hot out. She took my hand and brought me with her. We both got smoothies and we were heading back to where my sister and grandpa were, when then people suddenly started screaming and running. Linda grabs me and picks me up, making me drop my smoothie, and it then spilled all over my white shorts. We hid behind a food truck and I had started crying because I was really confused and scared and also sticky. I was and still kinda am a finicky kid. I also had bronchitis, so I was beginning to wheeze. Linda holds me and then shushes me gently to calm me down. "It's okay, baby. Shh, it's okay." I then hiccuped and tried to calm down, with the screaming still surrounding me. I got scared again and recall my chest feeling tight. "Baby, you need to calm down, okay? Breathe. Copy my breathing." Once I was calm enough and the terrifying excitement died down, we cautiously made it back, and Linda then asked my grandpa what had happened. Two guys started arguing and then one pulled out a gun and started going crazy, he said. I remember this vividly since I had pictured a man holding a gun to another and shouting like a psycho. We then sat down on our blanket and I realized I was still thirsty. So Linda went on her own this time to get everyone a water bottle, while my sister, who was about 3 in the time, and myself stayed put. My grandpa comforted me and told me I was safe. But not 20 minutes later, we hear another single shot and more screams. My grandpa grabbed me much like Linda did before, while she then grabbed my sister and we ran off, leaving the blankets we had behind. I don't really remember much after, but I remember falling asleep in the car and waking up with my head on my grandpa's shoulder, with him then telling my mom about what happened. Of course, my mom was worried, but ultimately decided that we would stick to playing in our neighborhood for a few weeks and no more festivals for a while. It was a really heart-racing experience for me, and I had this experience completely locked in the back of my mind until recently. I was a young teen girl, and I went bowling with 2 of my best friends. I'm a 5'2", brown-haired, green-eyed 15-year-old girl. When we were leaving the bowling alley, we had met these 2 grown men who were whistling at us as well as hollering really nasty things to us. When we got to the car had broken down. However, it was perfectly fine earlier. We had gone back in because it was a hot summer night. It was also closing time and the men were still in there. They were now trying to touch us and asking if we needed a jump when we hadn't even told them that the car was broken down. We were now trying to talk to one of the workers to distract us from the men, but that didn't stop them. I kept trying to tell them our ages, but it didn't even bother them. It was truly starting to creep me out. We then walked back to the car, and they had followed us. The car was parked pretty far away from ours, so we felt fine. When they got to their car, they then sat in their dark car staring over at ours, and they still weren't leaving. We had to sit there for over an hour waiting for someone to come pick us up. We had decided to walk back into the bowling alley, with the men honking at us and calling out to us through the window. They were waving us over and telling us that they had what we needed. My friend had almost believed them, but I told her that he was lying just to get us over there. We walked back in and then told the worker. She told us to stay inside until we see them drive away. That's when my friend's dad then calls her to tell her to come out. So while we're walking out, the 2 men in the car drove really fast over to us, but we ran to the car. We had told her dad about the whole situation, and he told us to close the doors and then stay inside the car and to not leave. The men then finally drove away, and we haven't seen them since. I'm very glad that none of us ever walked over to their car. Something really bad could have happened had we had done so. This happened on a warm summer day when my twin and I were just 8 years old, heading to an ice cream shop with our mother. Cass and I were super excited because we almost never had money to go out and get a treat like this. We had dressed in matching summer dresses that had a cat chasing a ball of yarn on the bottom of the dress. Hers pink and mine purple, with both of our long hair and pigtails. We entered the shop and we were excitedly deciding what flavor of ice cream we were going to get, when at a table no more than 4 feet away from the door sat an old man who made a strange noise. He had meowed like a cat, and when we looked over at him, he was licking at his hand and pawing at his face like a cat would. He pointed to our dresses where the cats were, and then smiled, revealing a major lack of teeth, and then once more began meowing, making intense eye contact at us both. We both just looked at each other trying to hold back our laughter, when he then made a hissing noise and reached for us. My mother, who had been watching from in front of us after hearing the hiss, simply gave the old man a weird look and just told us to keep walking. With the distraction of ice cream, my sister and I were completely sidetracked until we had to find a place to sit, my mother tactically picking the seats farthest away from the weird meowing old man. We were really enjoying our ice cream, making a mess, when the old man oh so casually tiptoed over so that he was sitting at the table right in front of my sister and I, but also behind my mother's back. He began licking at his hands again and staring at us, and then he began loudly meowing and attempting to purr. My mother got an odd look on her face but didn't turn around, just sternly told us that we were going to have to finish up outside. Unfortunately, we had to walk directly by him to get out the door. As we passed, he pointed at us, and in a weird high-pitched voice then said, "You like kitties? I'm a kitty myself. Take me home with you. I just want lovings." And then he meowed once more, and with that, he began standing up as if he was going to leave with us. Before my mother could even make sense of what to say, a man from a neighboring table who must have overheard stood up and they got between the man and us. "Yeah, I don't think so, pal," is all the man said. I remember before leaving glancing over at the man's table where his 2 sons sat, who gave us equally weirded out looks at the situation that just occurred right in front of them. I shrugged at the boys, as if to say that I didn't know what that was all about either. My mom then quickly thanked the man who interfered, and we leave, forcing her to choose between having 2 messy 8-year-olds eating melting ice cream in her car or wait until we're done, with the possibility that the weird old cat man might come out. The entire way home, we had to lean out of the car windows, the silence only being broken by the humming noises and the occasional meow sound from my sister and I with a laugh. Yeah, that was a weird one. This happened to me when I was 16. I had decided to do something over the summer break just so that I wouldn't get bored. My dad had offered me to house sit for one of his coworkers while she was away on business. I agreed, and my dad made the arrangements. He said that I would get paid $200 for the 5 days that I'd be house sitting for her. It seemed like a pretty good deal, so on that Monday, my dad had dropped me off at around 7:30 in the morning. His coworker was in a rush, so she had briefly explained where everything in the house was, and then took off in a cab right towards the airport, or wherever she was going. At first, I didn't feel that bored. The house seemed to be fun in, and she also had a dog, which was a plus because I loved animals. I guess the main reason she needed someone to house sit for her was to take care of her dog, a small Maltese by the name of Ivy. I played some video games that she had in the living room, then took Ivy for a walk around the block. I then watched some scary videos on my laptop before I decided to order some Chinese takeout for dinner. After dinner, I had watched some more Southern Cannibal videos in the guest room where I'd been sleeping before I actually fell asleep. The next few days were uneventful. I spent time with Ivy, played video games, cooked, cleaned, and so on. I wanted the house to be clean when the owner returned. It was a Thursday night when this happened. The next day of Friday, my dad's coworker would arrive. I finished my dinner that night and washed the dishes, wiped down the counters and stove, and made sure Ivy had all the food and water that she'd need. Then I retired to the guest room and watched some more videos in bed again. It was around 11:30 when I'd heard the car pulling into the driveway. I felt confused as nobody should have been arriving, not the owner and definitely not the mailman. I paused the video I was watching and then listened to the sound of heavy footsteps making their way up to the front door. Then bangs, heavy loud bangs. Someone was banging aggressively on the door. My heart began to pound furiously. I guess I only thought this could happen in scary movies, but at that point I had found myself in my own scary story. The banging on the door had paused, and then an angry man's voice then roared, "Open up, Jenny! I know you're in there! Open up the door now!" Before the pounding resumed. Jenny was the house owner's name. This man was looking for her, but why? I thought about the information that my dad gave me about her, and I remembered that he had mentioned that she had an ex. Could this crazy guy outside be her ex? "Open the door right now, Jenny!" The man outside roared again. "Open it now or I'll do it, and you won't like it if I do that." My heart began to pound even harder, and I felt as though I couldn't move, but I knew that I'd have to. I slowly crept out of the guest room and put on my shoes and jacket, which I luckily left by the back door. Outside, I could hear the man cocking back the hammer of a gun. "Damn it," I muttered. "He's got a gun." I crept back to the guest room, then picked up a trembling Ivy. She whined softly, and I had stroked her head just to keep her quiet as the first few shots then rang out. I knew that if the man fired enough bullets into the door, I'd definitely be dead. So I picked up my phone from the nightstand and dialed 911. After briefly explaining to the operator what was going on, I had dialed my dad, who was luckily still awake. I told him the situation and he said that he'd come as soon as possible. As soon as I tucked my phone into my pocket, I heard the gut-wrenching sound of the doorknob falling to the floor and then the door opening. He got in, or so I thought. I silently closed and locked the guest bedroom door before making my way to the window and then opening it. The guest room was on the first floor, so I could easily escape unharmed. That was if the crazy man didn't somehow catch and then shoot me to death. I climbed out of the window with Ivy in my arms and began to run as fast as my trembling legs would allow me to get away from the house. To my absolute horror, I heard the crazy guy then screaming, "Hey, stop it!" from behind me, and before I knew it, he was chasing me. Ivy whined and squealed in terror as I ran, but I was determined not to end up on the news as a dead teenage girl, being another statistic. I ran for what felt like hours, all the while hearing the man firing his gun from behind. It was really a miracle that I wasn't shot. To my advantage, the cops arrived just as I tripped over my shoelaces and then fell forward hard onto the pavement. The blaring cop cars were followed by my dad's car. Upon seeing me, my father rushed forward, then hugging me. I hugged him back and then hugged a trembling Ivy. I had turned to see officers unarming and then handcuffing the man. That night, my dad had spent time with me in his coworker's house, along with an officer who had volunteered just to make us feel safe, I guess. When morning came, my dad's coworker arrived, and upon hearing everything that happened, she had paid me $500 for keeping her dog safe and also going through all the fear and trouble. To this day, I'm so grateful to have the ability to get away, and I really believe that it came from all the scary stories I've watched to gain experience. I'm really happy that I made it out alive, but I still wonder, what would have happened if my dad's coworker hadn't gone on her business trip? Would she have been killed? I really hope not. I'm 22 and this incident happened about 1.5 years ago. I had just moved into my first apartment and I was in the process of moving in. The door that led into my apartment locks itself automatically when closed, so I was going to the entrance of the apartment complex to get my mail while talking on the phone with my boyfriend. I returned to my apartment and sat on the bed while opening up my mail while using the phone. I dropped the phone on the floor and it landed under the bed, so I had to lie on the floor and then stretch for it. I then saw something that caught my eye. There was someone under my bed. My eyes widened and I then choked the urge to scream. The person under my bed was lying with his back towards me and his head to his chest, so I couldn't see his face and he didn't see me. Trying to be rational while so many thoughts rushed through my head, I had picked up the phone and then said,
"Sorry, I dropped my phone. I'm just gonna take a shower real quick and then call you back."
The bathroom is right by my bed, so I hastily walked in, quietly locked the door, turned the shower on, and then jumped out of my window and called the police. For reference, my apartment is on the first floor. They told me to wait nearby, but to go across the street and see if anyone comes out of the door to the apartment complex. This was during the summer, and it was actually still light out. I placed myself across the street, hiding behind a car while watching my open bathroom window and the entry door. I called my boyfriend and he came to me just before the police. I gave them my keys and they went inside. Only moments later, 2 cops came out holding a thin and tired-looking man. His eyes looked crazy, but he didn't try to get away. The policeman that stood beside me and comforted me while the police searched through my house told me that the man stood outside my bathroom door with one of my kitchen knives waiting for me to come out. This man had somehow crept in my entry door while I was getting my mail and then hid under the bed. The man that was trying to hurt me turned out to be a homeless person, and he was eventually placed in a mental hospital. My boyfriend luckily moved in with me the very next day. Thanks for listening, everyone. I just wanted to share my story so that others might know what to do if they're ever in a situation like this. The police told me that what I did was truly amazing and rational, and that if I had screamed, this could have ended really badly for me. In the summer of 2022, I had applied to work on a cruise ship sailing around the islands of Hawaii. To start, I wouldn't recommend this job to anyone. We worked ridiculous hours and had absolutely no days off. This story, however, starts before I even boarded the ship. To work on cruises in America, one must complete STCW training. This is basically a week-long course that teaches you basic firefighting, paramedic, and seaworthy skills. After passing my medical, I headed off to complete this STCW training at a place that we'll call PO. I flew in for training stupidly early. I think it was 5 a.m. when I arrived, and I waited for the rest of my group to get to the airport. Once we were all there, we had took a bus to the training camp. You can imagine the tension. Here we are, completely new to each other, embarking on the adventure of a lifetime. All was well, except for this one guy. He's the center of the story. We arrived at the camp and set our bags into our rooms. I was lucky to not have a roommate. Once our initial meeting started, this man who we'll call S decided to cause problems from the get-go. He was about 60 years old with grimy hair and old tattered clothes. Now, I'm not one to judge. However, when someone is interrupting an explanation of a unique job, I definitely need to listen in. Throughout the meeting, this man continued to interject with useless anecdotes and questions that would obviously be answered shortly. Now, I know, it sounds like I'm being really harsh on this guy, but the average age of people at this meeting was maybe 25. I myself was 22 at the time, and we all felt that we thought this guy was slowing us all down. Anyways, as class progressed, this 60-year-old guy took a liking to one of the 20-year-olds. I guess that's kind of natural, but he'd run ahead to open doors for her and wait for her to exit class so that he could hold the door open for her. I guess it was sweet, but there still seemed to be something wrong with this guy. We went to firefighting training and he slowed us all down. We had to get our gear on in 60 seconds and the guy failed. After that day, things started to go downhill. So because S failed, he was no longer able to join the cruise ship and would be sent home. His flight, however, wouldn't leave until the same day that we flew to Hawaii. He still sat with us at lunch and he asked us what our courses were about. One day at lunch, I had made the mistake of saying that I loved people born in May. Well, turns out this guy was born in May, and he decided that I was his new target. His roommate told me that he would spend his nights standing up and staring at the wall for hours, that or making weird faces in the bathroom mirror. Anyways, after that, he made sure to always be by me and to also mention that he wanted a family with me. Keep in mind, I'm 22 and this guy is 60. He's older than my dad. The worst thing by far that happened was the last day that I was at PO. I came out of class to use the bathroom, and S was standing in the girls' bathroom. He cornered me against the wall and he told me that he couldn't stop thinking of me and that he wanted to impregnate me. He told his roommate that I was in love with him just because of the birth month. Luckily, I reported this lunatic, but I later found out that he had lied on his work form saying that he never committed a felony, when in actuality he'd gotten arrested for beating and stalking his ex-wife. He was homeless. She had a whole restraining order against him and they still let him go as far as the training camp for this cruise ship. Had this freak passed his firefighting test, he would have been working closely with people on vacation, and that thought makes me sick. How could someone get this far in the process without being stopped? It really makes me think twice about the people I encounter on board ships. Thank goodness I'm not working there anymore, but for the love of Pete, do better, cruise companies. Please look further into the people that you're employing and keep the vacationer safe. It's the least that you can do. Hey everyone, that's about it for today's stories. If you have your own story that you would like to send, you can send it in at southerncannibal.com, or you can email it at southerncannibalstories@gmail.com. I look forward to telling your story. Have a good night or good day, everyone. And remember to always